Avery, whose show is this? And we're live. Welcome, everybody, here to the Lakers Lounge podcast. I'm Anthony Irwin, Senior Lakers Insider for Clutch Points. And today on the show, we're going to be talking about more practice absences. Yep, we are just keeping up with that trend, and it's not great. So we apparently, look, Marcus Smart got sick, so he wasn't able to practice today. And that happens, right? That's something that just happens as part of a training camp, as part of an NBA season, just a calendar year. You guys have heard my voice over the last week or so, couple of weeks. Well, that's what happens when you have kids. I don't know if Marcus Smart has kids, but that's what happens when you have kids. It's like they bring home shit and you sound like crap for a while and you're not able to give it a go. And here we are. So Marcus Smart missing practice, whatever. But the continued planned absences, that's getting annoying. Is annoying, not getting. And then there was a report from Dan Wojcicki of The Athletic today about a really good, frankly, piece about Dalton Knecht. That touched on a whole bunch of stuff that was aggregated, and the one tidbit is what everybody is talking about, which referred to Dalton as a negative trade asset. And obviously Lakers fans didn't want to hear that because that obviously would change what the Lakers are capable of doing over the course of the season. So we'll go ahead and talk a little bit about that as well. So and then at the end of the show, I don't know how far either of those subjects are going to get us. I will explain where Dalton's trade value stands and why it stands where it does based on what I've heard. And I'm not going to, directly refute what Dan is talking about there, but I believe him, to a certain extent. Maybe not. I haven't heard it to that extent, but, to an extent, I think there is that sentiment out there. But yeah, I'll explain the Dalton thing. I'll talk about, the practice situation and that stuff. Heard a little bit about training camp to this point that contextualizes these things that don't sound great. And I don't know how thrilled you'll be to hear that, but there should be some time at the end of the show for some, Q&A. So if you guys have any questions that you guys want covered, hit me with them in the comments and I'll answer as many of them as I can there at the end of the show before little man wakes up from his nap. So without any further ado, let's dive on in. Quick reminder, please do hit that subscribe button. Please hit that like button. Please hit that share button. Hit me with comments and questions and all of that good stuff. And if you guys are listening to this in the morning via podcast, please subscribe wherever it is that you get your podcast, preferably on Odyssey, because I'm a company man. And let's get going. So we'll start with, it's not even up correctly. It's not even up at all. Sweet. The rundown for today. But all right, there we go. Luka and LeBron were still, and I guess Gabe, for that matter, was also a partial participant. Maxi Kleber was as well in today's practice. The Lakers haven't had a practice yet with full participation. Now more than a week into training camp and less than 2 weeks away from opening night. Now they aren't going to get, I believe, full participation because of LeBron's butt nerve thing that's going on. He talked about on his show with Steve Nash. He talked about the situation there that is going on and how he's not rushing to get back because of his age and some of that makes some sense, but also Nash kind of made a joke but was somewhat serious about it when he said that that's something that LeBron can technically do now with Luka. I mean, I guess, but you still need reps with your second best player. especially when you headed into the off season and training camp, singing from the heavens and praising the heavens that you might finally get the opportunity to get those reps. So, yeah, the note that we get here from the reporters who were there after practice, that LeBron once again did not participate in the team activities. LeBron or Luka didn't either. There, I don't really know why Luka isn't, to be completely, we need clarity on that one. I guess JJ had said after yesterday's practice that Luka was like dealing with some thing, I guess, and then said that he was being sarcastic, and it's hard to figure out whether he was being sarcastic about the thing that Luka is dealing with, or the, um, or joking about it, right? So, yeah, I don't know really what's going on there. Austin, I it seems like Austin participated in all of practice today, so that was good to hear. And you kind of carry things out from there. But Marcus Smart, like I said earlier, he didn't even attend practice because he had flu-like symptoms. Um, and hopefully he gets better soon. But yeah, I mean, I know you guys think that I'm crying about the sky falling or anything like that, when there was so much optimism coming off of media day, but I anticipated training camp being a lot more productive than it has been so far. So I don't, yeah, I would love to sit here and say, damn, it's been a great, let's compare, right? You guys have heard over the last few days and over the last week or so, you guys have heard how I've talked about practices, and training camp to this point. At no point have I seen a player. Maybe Gabe said something along those lines, but he kind of said it kind of joking about how hard JJ Redick has been making them run. But I haven't really seen a whole bunch of players coming out and being like, guys, dang, it hasn't been that. And you compare that to training camp with the Boston Celtics, who have much lower aspirations, frankly, for this season than the Lakers do. And you have Jaylen Brown, who is coming off of knee surgery, saying that he's playing for a track team, not a basketball team. He's also described training camp as war. Um, I got another quote here from a Celtic. Sam Hauser said, "This is probably the hardest training camp I've ever been a part of." And where are those quotes from the Lakers? Where are they at? You know, at no point have I seen any of them mention how like difficult this training camp has been. And by the way, the Celtics, they won a championship a couple years ago. Kind of sort of ran away with it too. And you can make an argument, if Jason Tatum doesn't blow his Achilles, they might have been able to scratch one out again last year. And the Lakers, the closest they've gotten to a championship in recent years was getting swept in the Western Conference. And then since then, it's been a sweep in the first round and a 5-game ass kicking when you had home court advantage last year. Where, where's the culture? Where's this culture of competition that Rob Pelinka talked about way back when he was hired? The only time we ever really saw that culture of competition was in the summer leading up to the year that they won a championship. Holy shit. It's almost like there's a correlation there. Like, what is the Lakers culture? To this point, it's excuse making, right? It's Rob Pelinka talking after every transaction window, why he didn't do X, Y, or Z. And then after the season, pointing to the fact that they had to build and you build teams, you build championship teams in the offseason, you tweak them during the season. Well, Rob has it backwards. And every single year after the season, he talks about how you only know it was kind of difficult to build that plane mid-flight. Okay. And then, with JJ Redick, all we get from him are excuses. That's all we ever hear. He's a podcaster. He's a good looking dude. So a lot of people, and he's charismatic. So a lot of people just kind of buy whatever he says, but it's not, this notion that Dalton Knecht, who we'll talk about obviously in a little bit, this notion that Dalton Knecht played poorly in summer league because he worked too hard. Was he care too much too? He loves too hard. Oh yeah, we sucked against the Phoenix Suns because they had a couple extra days of work than we've had. Okay, why? Other, let's set off to the side the fact that the Suns have travel, so they were allowed a couple official days. You could have had unofficial days where guys got in and got work done, you know. And by the way, the Lakers looked poorly conditioned in that game. I have a story from a source here who says, remember when JJ Redick talked about the how he timed the guys running their sprints, right? And how the guys didn't like that he timed them running their sprints. Well, the funny thing is nobody made it, and he hasn't timed them since. So that's fantastic. Where's this hard work coming from? Where's the give a bleep? And until I see it, until I actually see a player mention it, like, do we have to lower our expectations too? And part of this is a leadership thing because, I guess Luka didn't participate in that sprint that was timed. Neither did Austin. And obviously LeBron didn't either because of his glute thing. But like Austin, I guess, apparently has been leading by example. Where's Luka in this equation? Yeah, he played basketball again a few weeks ago. And yeah, he put in a lot of extra work over the course of the offseason. You do that so that when you get to offseason, you can build off of those things and enter the season with even more momentum. Not, yeah, I worked really, really hard. And then when everybody else was putting in work, I got to kick back and just kind of chill and then wind up back at first base with everybody else. Like, this training camp hasn't made any sense to me, especially from a team that boasts, nonsense like this. Terrible graphic, quite frankly. But you have this I guess TV that was placed in the middle of in the corner of the gym with this on the front of it: championship habits, championship communication, championship shape. Okay, but like, these are play-in habits. These are vie for a play-in game habits. These are hope to God you win enough games to avoid the play-in this brutal Western Conference habits. Stop gaslighting us. Stop telling us how hard that, how much you care about this stuff, and then through your actions don't care, right? Don't tell us about how difficult all this is, and then do so with a pina colada in your hand. Let's talk about Dalton. And so Dalton Knecht, obviously entering his second year. He is an older second year player, right? He is 24 years old. He will turn 25 in April of this of 26. And again, Dan Wojcicki of The Athletic. I keep on wanting to say LA Times, but Dan Wojcicki of The Athletic now wrote this big long profile about him, and in it, a talent evaluator or a scout for a different team told him that Dalton currently holds negative trade value around the league, meaning that the Lakers would have to attach something to Dalton Knecht to trade him. I'll just start by saying that is not necessarily what I've heard, but it also isn't that far off, where I would say like a small group of teams consider him a quote positive asset, right? Like meaning that like he is he would be something that adds to your trade offer with with some of these teams. He is considered by most teams that I've spoken to and most people that I've spoken to neutral value, making him essentially salary filler because he has an expiring contract. Um, and then, yeah, there are also a couple of teams at the other end of the bell curve who consider him a negative asset. Now it depends on who Dan spoke to and which team this person is linked to. But I think you can probably average this out to Dalton being worth neutral value, where he's not a negative, but he's also not a positive. He is just Dalton. And I do want to start by talking about why we arrived here. And it starts with why Dalton Knecht fell in the draft in the first place, which is his basketball IQ is like very, very low percentile. It is not good, and his attention to detail offensively and defensively is not where it needs to be. And some of it is instinctual, some of it is just not grasping some of these higher level NBA concepts. Um, but during the draft, like I spoke to some people, um, in scouting departments and stuff like that, and prospect scouts and stuff like that over the last, over the course of the day, knowing that I was going to talk about it here in the show. And essentially, what I wound up hearing back is that, like, yeah, he tested really poorly when we had our interviews with him, and was not, prepared, frankly, for, that kind of a setting, and did not conduct those interviews very well at all. You do tape interviews and where you study tape together, and this was what was told about Shedeur Sanders, right? Was that, like, he was given tape and then he showed up to an interview and some scout said there's some assistant coach or some coach or GM or assistant GM, whatever, said that, like, Shedeur showed up and was like, yeah, I'm too good to look at tape or whatever, whatever the story was. And some of that stuff can be coded. But in this case with Dalton, you know, I do believe it just based off of what we see, right? It's year 2. He's guarding Steph Curry. The one thing that you never do when you're guarding Steph Curry is not pay 100% attention to Steph Curry. And, the other day he gets back cut. This is at a time when he's trying to prove that he should have a bigger role than he's walking into heading into the season. So the basketball IQ, unless it gets better, like, we might be looking at a situation here where he'll get another chance and he might get another chance beyond that. But those chances are going to stop coming because everybody is going to realize, oh man, this guy just doesn't get it. And I don't even know, like, it's at a point where, like, you have Lakers coach, because the one thing I will say in Dalton's defense is that it's not that he doesn't want to get it. And it's not that he doesn't work at it, just some players and some people's, basketball IQs range. You have LeBron and you have Chris Paul and you have Luca and you have all of these, chess masters way up at the top. And then, you know, you'll have people ranging all up and down that spectrum from one way or another. And sometimes you'll obviously there has to be another end of it. And Dalton kind of makes up the people on the other end of it, or falls into the category of the other end of it. And it's just like, you are only as athletic as you are only as tall as you are. And you can do some things to improve your athleticism. You can do some things to make up for your lack of height or your lack of wingspan and stuff like that. And Dalton, I think, to his credit, is like an incredibly skilled offensive player. And that is one way to kind of make up for some of the instinctual things that you need. And I think he does have great instincts as an individual scorer. But when it comes to everything else on a basketball court, he is just highly deficient. And that's just the truth. And so you have that. That's why he fell in the draft to 17 in the first place. And then the defensive concerns. And again, it's like he has the tools to be an at least adequate defender. He's big. He can jump out of a gym. Not the most laterally quick guy. I think he's more north and south fast than he is shifty. So that kind of hurts him a little bit. Um, and and yet, here you find out that like it's again, you utilize craftiness to make up for the lack of athleticism. Well, in this case, he has the athleticism, but it's to make up for the lack of defensive IQ and those defensive instincts. He's a good rebounder. He can get way up above the rim and get and grab rebounds that most guys his size can't. So I think there's a benefit there. And look, the other reason that he is like, ask yourself this: how often have you looked ahead to Dalton Knecht, the basketball player this year? Have you ever? It's mostly been, well, maybe we could include Dalton, or maybe they shouldn't include Dalton for Andrew Wiggins. That's been the extent of any conversation about Dalton Knecht I have seen in the chat and in the Discord and all that stuff. Like it's been very few people who are like, God, I can't wait to see what Dalton has for us this year. And like even the most optimistic people are like, yeah, I'm really hoping that Dalton can kind of get back on the right track here, and yeah, you look at the landscape here of what the Lakers are trying to do, either at his position. And remember, at his position, you have Austin, you have Smart, you have for a second there, people were trying to square peg, round hole, Laravia into that group. I don't see that at all. But you could, if you squint hard enough and you have like 13 beers, maybe. But overall, you have a cornerstone player at your position, and one of your top offseason acquisitions at your position, and they just signed another guy who you can look at and see, oh yeah, that could be a Dalton, like especially at the small forward spot. Jake could be a Dalton replacement, probably is a Dalton replacement. And yet, like, he was bad in summer league and he was bad over the weekend. And yeah, like, I know people kind of overreacted or had a reaction to the tidbit that a scout said that, we saw him play over the weekend and saw a lot of the same things that make us concerned about it. And I saw people say, like, there's no way that anybody is, judging Dalton off of a couple of preseason games. Okay. But can they judge him off of a bad rookie year? Can they judge him off of a bad second summer league? Can they then add the couple of games that they saw from the preseason to their takeaways from the bad rookie year and the bad summer league? That's how you arrive at somebody potentially in some people around the league's eyes being worth negative value. So look, and by the way, I want to be clear. I'm rooting for Austin. I know I've been really, really hard on him in this segment, and I know that it sounds like I've kind of given up on him. And to a certain extent, I don't know. I kind of sort of, I guess, have as a prospect. But I am truly rooting for Dalton, not just from the Lakers perspective, but from a human perspective. Like, it's anytime I criticize a player or don't like a player coming out of college or don't really see it with an NBA player, I hope I'm wrong. And on this stuff, I hope I'm wrong. And I hope that these talent evaluators are wrong. I just don't really see it. And the final like nail in the coffin here for Dalton, all of these teams, especially in this era, all of these teams, and including the Lakers here, all of these teams would overlook all of this stuff with Dalton: the basketball IQ, the defensive deficiencies, like the inconsistent defense. All of that would be overlooked if he shot anywhere near to the level that the Lakers thought they were, the player that they drafted was capable of shooting. But the reality is he's inconsistent. And if he ever has been consistent, those slumps vastly outmatch the good shooting stretches, right? Everybody looks at, well, remember him in November? Remember look at his career high. It's like, yeah, I remember, but I also remember everything since. And again, if Dalton wants to know how to stick in the NBA, you got to figure out a way to be smarter on a basketball court. You got to figure out a way to be less of a concern defensively. And most importantly here, you got to be good at what you were drafted to do. Dalton Knecht was drafted to stretch the floor, to be a fire alarm shooting threat, to where anytime the ball touches this dude's hands, you have the other team screaming, "Shooter!" Like, and doing having anybody who is anywhere near the vicinity, his vicinity, sprinting at him to get him off the 3-point line. So until he fixes that first and foremost, and then somehow figures out a way to address the defense and the basketball IQ, then we're going to keep on having this conversation. And the longer that he continues to look that he does, the more and more and more his stock is going to fall. And by the end of it, I don't think his floor probably is, uh, an expiring contract and essentially a lottery ticket that a team might buy that gets thrown in to a trade package. That's probably his floor. I don't think he'll fall any further in terms of trade value, without getting hurt or without getting into any kind of trouble. But that's probably his floor. The Lakers need to figure out a way to raise that ceiling, because I also don't necessarily see him jumping up back to anywhere near how valuable he was at the time that he was drafted. That I think if they can, that's going to be kind of the goal with him, and that's going to be his goal, so that he could maybe find himself a situation that he's more comfortable in. The reality also too is that he just might not be comfortable being a Laker anymore. They traded him. It's always difficult when you get traded and you get sent back to your team. That wrecked Lamar Odom's career. He was just never the same after that. And maybe here with the Lakers, it's that, you have that going on with Dalton as well. But regardless, I truly do hope for the best here with Dalton, and hope that he can turn it around to a point here where, we look back on this entire segment and we just laugh at how stupid I sounded throughout all of it. All right. So yeah. All right. Let's see. Lulu84, Luka is taking shots during preseason games. He participated last week. How is it modified? How does that build chemistry? Yeah, that's what I don't really get, is that it almost seems like Luka has been scaled back. And look, we do know that the Lakers have been shady as hell when it came to injury stuff. It might be that Luka has an actual injury that they just aren't telling anybody about before they have to, right? The rules change quite a bit by the time you get to the regular season, because then you have gambling partners and actual gamblers, and you have that entire world to kind of deal with. Those interests become all the more pronounced by the time you get to the season. But yeah, I truly don't understand what's going on there with Luka, where there isn't really an injury to speak of, and he also isn't really doing much of anything. So those two things are kind of difficult to square. What I will say is with Luka, the part that drives me nuts too is just get him on the court for a couple of possessions here and there. Get him on the court and just give him a couple of reps just to, help anybody get used to playing with him again. The only guy on the roster who has an extensive history of playing with Luka is Maxey, and he can't play and probably won't play very much this year. So everybody else, again, to use the Lakers' own phrase from last year, everybody else was building the plane mid-flight last season, and then now are choosing to take off in the plane where like you could see the bolts shaking on the wings. It's like, I don't know if you guys have ever flown Spirit, but you get on that plane and you're like, this is gonna fly, right? Like you're sure. Like the worst seat on a Spirit airline plane is one where you can see the wing, because you're like, that's not duct tape. Like that has to be like space tape, right? That's got to be something. You know. Um, you basically want to try to, like, you always want to get a seat way up in front, and that way you can't see what else is wrong with the plane as you walk down further. And you definitely don't want any seat where you can see the wing or you can see the engine. So he's like, wait, is that an engine or a fan? Is that and the Lakers right now are like boarding Spirit Air. Like they are choosing to fly Spirit Air heading into the season. And it just doesn't make any sense to me, especially while they talk about how important culture is. It just doesn't make any sense. I don't know. Maybe I'm making too big a deal out of this, and maybe it's one of those things that I kind of latch onto at a time where we don't have very much else to talk about. But there is plenty to talk about, and I wish there was more to talk about. I wish the Lakers would give us more to talk about by practicing, by getting their guys out there, by having their best players participate in preseason games. Is that a weird concept? I even football players play in some preseason games, and they go out there and they get into car crashes every weekend. Like what we're watching when we watch these guys play football is like a prolonged car crash. And I use that word because I've had football players say to me when they wake up after playing in an NFL game, they say, "Yeah, I've had car crashes that feel better than some NFL games that I play in." And some of those guys play in some of those preseason games that don't count, that don't matter, where they could at any moment tear an ACL. Those guys play. Lakers can't get 27-year-old Luka out there. We're talking about Luka like he's 35. He's 27. Austin is in the same age range. Like, I get it with LeBron. He's 41. He's about to turn 41 or whatever it is, 42. I don't know. I get it that you got to be really, really careful with him. But like for how careful they were with LeBron last year, he still played in enough games to be eligible for awards at the end of the season. Has that much changed in the 1 year? I truly couldn't tell you. I truly couldn't tell you, and these questions are just kind of mounting up. Let's see. Is there any other questions? CJ Voss, it sounds like you would be happier if the Lakers were going all out and Braun ended up injuring himself versus what's happening now. I would be all right. Say that again to yourself. Say it out loud. Read it. A Lakers podcast host would be happier if Lakers superstars got hurt and thus tanked his audience. That's what you're saying here. And by the way, like obviously it matters beyond that. As human beings, I don't want to root. I would never be happy to hear anybody got hurt playing in a sport. Like nobody, right? So this idea that like I'm sitting here saying because I want NBA players to practice and get ready for an NBA season, I somehow sound like I would prefer they went harder and got hurt. You realize I make my living doing this? Like, I pay my mortgage with this. And if the Lakers go prolonged stretches with Luca out, LeBron out, all that stuff, you get hurt. My finances are affected. That's not what I'm rooting for. Trust me. Now, what I will say is I do think by not extending these guys in training camp at all and then throwing them into the deep end when the actual season starts and all of a sudden having to quickly ramp up to NBA competition, especially in this Western Conference where every single night or every other night you're playing a playoff contender. I do think you risk injury that way by ramping up too quickly after taking it easy during the time when you should be pushing yourself. I would imagine a good chunk of the audience here played sports. Did any of you get to, like, in high school when you guys went through conditioning seasons? Were they ever easy? Like, was that ever a time where you were like, man, I feel nice and rested now. This is great. No, God, no. In the run up to the season, in the weeks leading up to the season, we were running like crazy. And it was for the sole purpose of not wanting to get hurt whenever the season actually did start, let alone needing to keep up with whatever teams that you're going up against. The Lakers are playing in a division with the Clippers, who are crazy deep and who are going to be, if they remain even somewhat healthy, they are going to be a difficult team to play 4 nights out of the year. They are playing a Golden State team that just ran them off the court the other night, and again are going to be vying for playoff seeding. And if they remain even somewhat healthy, they are going to be tough as hell to play 4 nights out of the year. They're playing a Phoenix Suns team that just beat the shit out of them a few nights ago, and that's like the worst team in your division. And the other team is the Kings, who are all somehow combo guards and wings and athletes and stuff like that. And they're going to try to get you into a track meet and try to run you off of the court. Meanwhile, the Lakers are hoping that Jake LaRavia, who I'm sorry, like, does not have the foot speed to do this. They're hoping he can guard 1 through 4. I don't even know that he can guard 2 through 4. I think he's strictly like, he probably should only be guarding 3s. They're going to be hoping that LeBron James is somehow able to make up for the fact that they're going to start Rui on opening night. Have you seen him try to tail somebody on a screen? They're hoping that DeAndre Ayton is going to be able to anchor a defense and also get out and run in transition. They're hoping that Luca is finally going to care on defense after going through a preseason having not played any defense. They're hoping that Austin is going to be the point of attack defender when we know what that looks like. And they're hoping that they're going to make up for all of these questions that we have about the roster by way of culture somehow, a culture that is just completely lacking based on their approach to this offseason. That's it. Like, come on, man. Be a little smarter. Mark Hoosie, does anyone want a Hennessy and Coke? Yes, absolutely. Hold the Coke, though. Hold the ice. Pour a triple. See? Damn kids. All right. I'm going to go ahead and, end this episode here at that point. My goodness. Hold on. I'm going to end this episode here at that moment and go ahead and enjoy the rest of my evening. We have a Dodgers game to watch tonight, so hopefully that puts me in a better mood. A team that actually does care about culture and competition and all that stuff, and have been perennially in the playoffs and annually a championship favorite. Um, all throughout their organization, they care about those things, and that work, that care, that belief, that attention to detail, that culture, that has resulted in one of the most historic runs of regular season and hopefully continued postseason success that baseball has ever seen. And fortunately, those that same group of owners that have watched that take place and watched that transformation take place, hopefully they bring that level of culture and give a bleep and all that stuff into this organization that, like, honestly has just grown way too lax and way too comfortable. JJ Redick getting a contract extension after 1 year, and in that 1 year getting boosted from the playoffs. Like, what are we doing? Where's the culture? Where is it at? Until we actually see evidence of it, I give two fucks about that stupid banner that they threw up there. They need to be a lot better than they have been to this point. So have a great rest of your day. Make somebody else's, and I will talk to you tomorrow.
Bye, everyone.